Welcome back to another Waynos Fotos videos, and this video is specifically about the Blazar Remus anamorphic lenses. Now I've got the 45mm on my camera right now and it's got no diopter on it, so this is just the lens as is with no interference. I've also got the 65mm on another camera which is going to show me adjusting the lights. And what we're going to trying to achieve in this specific video is artifacts associated with the Blazar Remus lenses. Now, if you watch my last video on my monopod, you could see that there was a vertical line that came down the side of my face right here. If you go and check out that video, and there was also like a blue dot here. So there was a couple of artifacts in that video from the way I'd set the lights up. So what we're going to try and do today is replicate some of these artifacts. Now, you may want these artifacts in the shot, or you may not want these artifacts in the shot. So what we're going to try and achieve here is what causes them, or what angles cause them, so you know, or you're informed about how these artifacts are created. So if you don't want them, you can avoid them, or if you do want them, you can induce them in your clip. So that's what we're going to try and do today. I don't know how successful it's going to be, because obviously we need to just turn the lights whichever way we need to try and get those artifacts to appear. Now, what I've got in the room at the moment is, as you can see behind me, I have a spot with Fresnel on it, and so I can adjust that wide and narrow, and you can see that's throwing a flare across the lens, which is the normal flare that we associate with anamorphic lenses. In front of me right here, I've got a gridded softbox. It's quite a small one, and that's lighting my face right here. And behind me, I've also got another light with a reverse umbrella and a diffuser on it that's shining some light into the back of the picture. So the room's a bit more well lit than I normally would do it. And that's so when I go over and adjust the light, you'll be able to see me adjusting it. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to start to have a bit of a play with the light at the back to see if we can somehow induce it. Then what I'm going to do is we're going to add the diopter onto the lens, because that was the condition I had in the previous video where it showed those artifacts. So the artifacts could be caused by just by the anamorphic lens, the Blazar Remus lens, or it could be caused by the diopter, or could be caused by a combination of the both. But that is probably irrelevant, because as soon as I put the diopter on, I can't separate that. Anyway, that's what we're going to do. So hang on, guys, and we'll see if we can actually induce these type of unusual flares, like these vertical lines or vertical flares, which are being bounced around in the lens. So off we go, and I'm going to go and adjust the light right now. Now I've turned the light away. We're not getting any actual anamorphic flare from it. So that's a little bit, I don't think we're actually getting any artifacts there. So I'm going to go and adjust it again. Okay, I'm not too sure what's happening there. I've turned it a little bit. It's not facing directly into the camera. It's facing off to this side of the picture, but not as much as the previous one. So I'll go in and adjust it again. So this is facing a little bit more closer into the lens. So I've just adjusted it slightly again. I'll go and move it again. Okay, so that's almost facing into the lens. It's just off slightly to the side. So we're going to try and keep turning it across, see if we can get those artifacts to appear. That's with the light at the back facing directly into the lens. That's with it facing directly at my softbox, which is just right here in front of me. That's with the light facing off to this side now onto, I don't know if you can see, I've got some shutters here. So they are on this side here. So let's go and change the light again. So we've got the light changing there again. So that is even more to that way. And you can see the flare from the anamorphic lens has almost disappeared. Okay, so that is about as far as I'm going to do it. It's now facing my umbrella, which you can't see, it's off screen. So that's shining into the back, which I showed you earlier. So we have done that test. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the diopter on and I'm going to refocus it, and we're going to do that test again. So just give us a moment, guys, and I'll get this diopter on. Now, of course, because it's got the diopter on, it's out of focus, so we just need to adjust that up. I think that's pretty close, pretty close. What do you reckon, guys? Here we go. That's about it. Okay, so now we've got the diopter on, and I'm going to do the test. We're going to go and get to that light at the back, and we're going to shift it back across to see what happens. We're starting to get the flare, the anamorphic flare coming back in. I can't actually see any vertical artifacts as yet, but we'll keep going. Okay, I've got the light at the back now shining directly towards the softbox here, and I think now we're having an artifact just right here. I can see that coming in. So that does show that once I put the diopter on, we can induce it. So the light is slightly off center. So let's shine the backlight now straight into the camera, see if that artifact that's right here stays there. It's still there. So we've got the light at the back, right, which is inducing the anamorphic flare, but we've also got this vertical artifact. So now we're going to keep moving the rear light across. Yeah, the artifact's still there. I can still see it. So we still got the artifact. So I'm going to push the lens across a bit further. Okay, so I've pushed the lens off a bit further. We've kind of lost our flare, and it looks like the artifact has now disappeared. So the diopter is obviously a contributing factor to that vertical flare that's happening in the lens. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the Frensal on the light, because I think I've got it set to the widest, and I'm going to now focus it in and see if that makes a difference. And then after that, we're going to just put a concentrator on the front. I don't know what you call it, like a shell, you know, which apparently is supposed to give you more lumens in a direction. So it's not something you can adjust. But we'll go through the process. I'll show you what I'm using to do that. Okay, so with the lens just changed like that, it looks like nothing, but we're not getting any flare. So let's turn it into towards the camera. Nothing yet. That's with it just facing just off to the side here. That's with it shining directly into the camera. And as we can see, the artifact here, the vertical artifact, as I'm running my finger along it, has come back. And that's with the lens, with the light focus, spot focused, shining directly into the camera. We're getting quite a bit of halation as well around, but when I had it wider, we didn't get so much halation. So that's something to be aware of. If you adjust your light, you can change the halation in the Blazar Remus lenses. Well, that's just shining off a little bit to the softbox I've just got right here in front of me. So I still believe we have the artifact there. It's a little bit lighter, but it's still there. And the halation is gone because I've turned it just away from the camera. Okay, I've just angled a little bit of way. We've lost the flare, the anamorphic flare across the picture, and it looks like the artifact now is gone. We're back. Just forgot to turn on the other camera. Anyway, so now we have basically no artifacts and we have no anamorphic. So what have we, with just the Frensal on, what could we have established? We've established that when we've got the diopter on and the light is shining into the lens, then we get the artifact in the view, which is pretty close to the lens, within a sort of angle of the camera. And with the Fresnel focused to a spot, we create more halation than if the Frensal is focused in a bigger, broader type spot. So that's something to keep aware of. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and change it to one of those cones. And I'll just get the cone. I'll just show you. I'm going to use a little one, and then I'm going to use a big one and see if that makes any difference. And these are the Nanlite lights. So it could be different with aperture. I can't test all the lights. I use Nanlites. Now what we've got here, we've got one cone. This is the big cone, which comes with the forza lights. And this was a little cone that comes with the cheaper version, which is the one that's not the forza. I can't remember the name of it, but it's one that you can't use batteries. It plugs straight into the power. So what we'll do is we'll start off with a little one, and I'm just going to go and change it on the light, and then we go and see if we can reproduce that artifact. Now with the little cone on the light, with it facing towards the umbrella, we're not getting much. We're not getting much flare up the top. We're not getting much artifact. So let's start to turn it into the camera and see what we get. Okay, that's with it just facing towards the shutters I've got there. We're still not seeing anything induce. A little bit of a flare there, tiny, but we're seeing no artifact as yet. Okay, so that's with it shining at the softbox I've just got here in front of me. As we can see, we're again starting to get a bit of halation and the artifact is back. Okay, that's with it directly into the lens and we're getting a lot more halation. And see if I cut it out, halation gone. That's the look. That's with it facing directly into the lens and the artifact is back. Okay, that's where it's turned away, slightly away from the lens. And we can see we're still getting a bit of halation, not too much. The artifact is still there. And if I kick it out, and we can see the artifact disappears and also the halation, it disappears as I block the light coming into the lens from the light at the back. Now I've got it turned away. It's actually facing the other camera. It's right over in the corner. And as we can see, I do believe the artifact is gone and the flare is gone as well. So guys, that's it with the little cone I've got on. Now I'm going to go and change it to this cone, the big cone, and I'm going to put that on the lens and see if that makes any difference as well. Okay, so that's with the big cone on now, and we're actually, even though it's still in exactly the same position, we didn't have a flare with the little cone, but we do have a little bit of a flare with the big cone. That's probably possibly because of its wider and we can see into the lens. And what I'm also seeing as well on my other camera is that the flare in the 65mm that's on the other camera, which I'll show you, is that when I change the cone, the actual flare changes dramatically. We've got a single type flare with the smaller cone, but when we put the bigger cone on, you kind of get like multiple flares in. So that's interesting to know if you want to have a different type of flare by using a different cone, especially on the 65mm. It doesn't seem to be making such a big difference on the 45mm. So let's start to turn the bigger cone into the lens and see what happens. 1, 2, yeah, I'm just checking my mic's on because it's the screen's gone dark. So let's go and do that now. Now that's with the lens facing just off to this side here. It's just to this side. And we're getting the soft flare and the artifact is back. Okay, so this now is with the light shining directly into this lens, and that is interesting because we're not getting multiple flares. Well, probably if you look very closely, but it just looks like one wide lens and the artifact is still here. And that's with the light shining directly into this lens. So let's start to turn it away. Yep, the artifact is still here, and we're still seeing a very similar type flare. Let's keep turning it away. Okay, so that's with the light now facing directly to my umbrella light, which I've got over here on the side, which I showed you earlier. So the artifact look is still there, even with it turned right away. We're still getting a little bit of flare. So in conclusion, then we have the artifact is being created by the diopter. So it's not the lens, the anamorphic lens, the Blazar Remus anamorphic lens. It is a diopter that is somehow changing the way the light's going into the anamorphic lens and creating this artifact here in the image. Now, interestingly enough, I have seen this vertical artifact on one of my other videos. There's one I did at the Antip National Park, which was the first one, and there it did appear, but that was without a diopter. Now, so you can get it in certain situations, but I think it's rare. But in me, with my tests right now, I cannot reproduce the vertical artifact without the diopter on. So that's just something to consider if you're using diopters. Now, what I'm going to do now is, because I've noticed that the flares can look different in a 65mm, which I've got over in the corner there, I've got that camera on, I'm going to get my light and I'm going to move it around and see if I can try and create some different flaring in the 65mm. Okay guys, so we have now the artifact here. So let's remove the diopter off the lens and no more artifact. Interestingly enough, now I've taken off the diopter, the flare has changed as well. Let me just refocus it. So now we've actually got that bigger cone still on the light, and it's changed the way the flare looks. So the flare now looks like it's got a number of different lines, and I'm starting to think if I make the focus longer, and bring that light into focus, we can see the flare actually changes. So now I've got the light is actually focused, not me. And as you can see, the flares coming out of that cone now are a number of lines. They're not a blur of one strip. So that's interesting to know as well. So it's probably good that I did this test, because we can not only create artifacts, but we can manipulate the flare and how it looks in the Blazar Remus by where the focus is set and what type of cones we use on the camera. I'm just interesting to know if I go and change that cone back to the little one, if it does something similar. So let's just try that before we close this video up on what experimentation we've done regarding these artifacts. Well, just for instance sake, that's no cone. That's just cob light without anything on it. It gives a very fine line if you like that type of look. Now let's go and put this little cone on. So there you go, guys. So that's actually very interesting. I'm glad I actually did this test because I've actually learned something as well, which is really good. And this is the whole purpose of this video, is how can we use our Blazar Remus lenses and use them in a way that we're aware of what they do and we have the knowledge to be able to get the image that we want or the type of flare that we want in our image when we're doing our filming. So that's interesting. I must admit, I think I prefer the finer line. So I'm going to go and take that little cone off again, because that still gives a wider one, and just come back here and just sign off with the finer line in my image. So that's it, guys. Thanks for watching, and if you got it this far, I hope you really got something out of this video on how you can use your Blazar Remus lenses in future and how you can change the type of flare, how you can avoid getting artifacts if you're using diopters. Just be a little bit aware. These are Hoya diopters, and I don't know if other diopters may create the same type of effect or artifacts, but I'd probably say, yeah, they could. That one I was using was a +1. I'm not going to put all the other ones on because they're just going to make the video a whole lot longer, which this video's probably got quite long now. Anyway, guys, that's the video for today, and I will see you next vid.